everyone. Welcome to WION Live Broadcast with me, Susan Tehrani, coming to you from New York City. As usual, first, we're going to take a look at the stories making headlines this hour. According to Ukraine's defense ministry, Russia attacks Ukraine's main inland port across the Danube River, sending global food prices soaring. Reports say 40,000 tons of grain have been destroyed. Turkey President Recep Tayyip Erdogan urges Russian President Vladimir Putin not to take steps to escalate tension. This after Moscow struck facilities vital for grain shipment from Ukraine. Erdogan stresses significance of grain deal as a bridge for peace. After imposing sanctions on Niger, West Africa nations bloc says that it has sent a delegation to negotiate with the junta. ECOWAS says that it could authorize use of force if elected President Mohamed Bazoum was not reinstated within a week. Beijing's weather service says deadly rains that pummeled China's capital in recent days were the heaviest since records began 140 years ago. And Brazil crashes out of the Women's World Cup after a goalless draw against Jamaica, who reached the last 16 for the first time. It also ends the World Cup career of the tournament's all-time leading goal scorer, Marta. An email sent by Hunter Biden to his business partner Devon Archer in 2011 is now making headlines. An email acquired by Fox News says that Hunter Biden bragged to Archer about his relationship with Chinese business tycoon Feng. The email says, quote, Feng loved Hunter Biden for his last name and for always traveling with handsome, godlike Aryan men. Feng is also referred to as super chair in the email, and according to this 2011 email, Feng also helped Hunter Biden's firm secure a multi-million-dollar venture in China. This latest development comes shortly after Archer testified in front of the House Oversight and Accountability Committee behind closed doors. Archer told the committee that Hunter Biden would often put his father on speakerphone while meeting with business partners, and that this happened some 20 times. He further claimed that Feng was generous to Hunter because of his family connections. Okay, for more on this, we are being joined by Mr. Greg Swenson, international affairs expert and China analyst. Greg, welcome to WION, and thank you so much for joining us. It seems that this elephant in the room, or so to say, in the White House, just seems getting more prominent as each day goes by, but Democrats continue to say there's no there, while Republicans say this is a clear smoking gun. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Susan, great question. The Democrats, I think, will start losing credibility if they keep arguing that there's nothing there. You know, this has been buried by the press. It's been buried by the Department of Justice and buried by the Democrats for several years now. I mean, essentially a media blackout on this news. This is not new. I mean, we've known about this for a long time. The laptop came out in 2020, right before the election. The FBI had the laptop as early as 2019. So, you know, this shouldn't be news, but incredibly, less than 50% of Americans know about it. So, you know, I think you're going to see the Democratic Party continue trying to bury it, to continue to say that there's nothing to it. But I just don't know how they can do that when this is not speculation. This is bank records from Bank of America and suspicious activity reports, so-called SARS, from Bank of America, JP Morgan, Wells, several other banks there were 170 suspicious activity reports on the Bidens. And that's not speculation or right-wing conspiracy theory. That's just fact.
And we already know that at this point, President Biden lied when he said he never discussed his son's business dealings with him, considering the fact that he's been on the phone at least 20 times. I mean, okay, they didn't talk shop, but still, we know, wink, wink, nod, nod, what was happening. Right. Our next story is about Donald Trump's indictment, and I'd like to get your opinion on the fact that every time we have a big bombshell about Hunter, it seems that it's followed the next day with an indictment of some sort against Donald Trump, although we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. What is your assessment of this?
It's an amazing timing, and, it could be a coincidence, although I'd be surprised. It's happened several times now. You saw it with the Albert Bragg indictment, and especially with the document indictment that came right after really damaging Hunter and Joe Biden news. And so this isn't all about Hunter. This definitely involves Joe. You mentioned, that he's been lying about, ever discussing Hunter's business at all. And, he's had to cop to that now. And you notice that his press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, changed the language a bit last week. She tried to do it without, getting noticed, but it was quite obvious to the press that she changed it from never discussed his business to never been in business with my son. So I don't know how he's going to explain the payments that were made to various Biden family members. They have not yet seen a bank payment to Joe Biden. There is one bank record that had a payment to a bank account just called Biden. It didn't have anybody's first name, but payments went to, several of the Biden family members, including Joe Biden's daughter-in-law and granddaughter, who have nothing to do with Hunter's business at all. So, this is quite obviously influence peddling at the very least. And then the question is, what did China get in return? And even the perception that there could be a quid pro quo, there could have been favorable treatment. You saw how the White House pressured Facebook and other media companies to remove any reference to the lab leak theory, which is now proven to be quite credible.
That's right.
And so, that's not a coincidence. And even the perception that there's, some sort of payment or return for the payments that were made, not only from the private equity fund that Hunter and Devon Archer started, but by the energy company CEFC. And then, of course, there's Burisma in Ukraine. There's the Romanian oligarch and the Russians. It's really just countless.
Very true. Optics plays such an important role, as you mentioned. Greg Swenson, thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to speaking to you again very soon.
Thanks. Look forward to it. Thanks again.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump was indicted for alleged attempts to overturn the 2020 election. This is the third time in 4 months that the former president has been charged. Here's a look at the indictment. It is the third criminal indictment of the 77-year-old Trump since March. The indictment charges him with 3 counts of conspiracy and 1 count of obstruction. The new charges raise the prospect of Trump, frontrunner for the 2024 Republican nomination, being embroiled in more legal proceedings. The 2024 presidential campaign is expected to be bitter and divisive, to say the least. The indictment accuses Trump of a conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, the January 6, 2021 joint session of Congress held to certify Joe Biden's election victory. Trump is also accused of seeking to disenfranchise American voters with his false claims that he won the November 2020 presidential election. Special counsel Jack Smith, a former war crimes prosecutor at The Hague, said the Capitol attack was unprecedented and it was an assault on the seat of American democracy. Trump lashed out at Smith, calling him deranged, and accused him of issuing yet another fake indictment to interfere with the presidential election. The former president says that he will run for president from jail if convicted on any of his various indictments. The White House once again remains silent on the indictment President Biden, who is seeking re-election next year, continued his beach vacation in Delaware and went to dinner with First Lady Jill Biden before going to watch Oppenheimer. Amid the firestorm of political investigations, where do things stand for Trump? Well, Biden and Trump are tied in the polls, and according to a New York Times Siena College poll, despite 51% saying that they think Donald Trump has committed serious federal crimes, both Trump and Biden received 43% in a hypothetical rematch. The Republican frontrunner in the 2024 White House race could end up navigating a series of trials right in the middle of campaigning to become the next president. Trump has already been indicted over his handling of top-secret classified documents, making him the first former U.S. president to face federal criminal charges. The trial in Florida is next May. The twice-impeached Trump has also been charged in New York with making hush money payments to a porn star. Then, Trump is being investigated in the southern state of Georgia for pressuring officials there to overturn Biden's 2020 election victory. Evidence include a taped phone call in which he asked Georgia's then Secretary of State to find enough votes to reverse the results. Trump was found liable recently in a civil case for sexually abusing and defaming a former magazine columnist, E. Jean Carroll, in 1996. In New York, the state attorney general has filed a civil suit against Trump. It accuses the former president and 3 of his children of fraud by overvaluing assets to secure loans and then undervaluing them to minimize taxes. Trump has denied all wrongdoing. Okay, well, with that introduction, for more on this, we are being joined from Washington, D.C. by correspondent Kate Fisher. Great to see you. So a lot is happening. As I mentioned, and as we have been mentioning, Donald Trump seems to be in quote unquote hot waters, but not among the Republicans. His polling is steadily rising amidst all of this controversy. What can we attribute this to?
Yeah, it's quite incredible. If you might have thought that a former president being indicted so often and so regularly would have an effect on his popularity, but no, the effect it's had is to make him even more popular amongst Republicans. He has increased his percentage point polling lead over Ron DeSantis, who was the closest to him just a few months ago, by it's now 30 percentage points, kind of far and away the leading frontrunner for the Republican nomination. And every time he is indicted, it pushes his poll numbers further up. So it shows that this kind of his narrative when he is indicted is to say that it's the system is against him, that it's a witch hunt, and it's the same system that is against the people who would vote for him. And that message is resonating clearly. Every time he is indicted, it gets more people behind him. And it's also not just helping his poll numbers, it's helping his presidential run war chest, the money he is gaining to try to carry out this campaign. Yeah. He's raising more money on the back of these indictments, and it's having a really positive effect on his campaign, much, I'm sure, to the disappointment of all the other Republicans in this race.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just fascinating to watch that any Republican that criticizes him, their poll numbers keep going lower and lower. Really an enigma. Kate, I want to continue by asking, where will these indictments ultimately go if they are in the middle of a presidential election where perhaps, let's say, Joe Biden once again is running against Donald Trump? Will this interfere in his campaigning, as many have reported?
Yeah, it's certainly unprecedented. So much about this is unprecedented, but to have a former president running for re-election to the White House while also fighting multiple criminal indictments is something that this country has never seen before. So it's hard to predict what it will look like, but certainly it is going to be an exhausting and time-consuming process. A presidential campaign is already an exhausting process and takes up all your time. Fighting criminal indictments is one as well, and to do them together will be a huge challenge. He's going to have to split his time, his engagement on each side. He's going to have to employ more people. His legal team will be, as well as his campaign team. It's going to be very difficult, and it's going to take him off the campaign trail at times. But with what we've just been talking about, every time there is some publicity over these trials, it is likely, if we go on what we've seen so far, to increase his popularity amongst his voting base. But what we don't know is what effect it would have if and when he is chosen as the Republican candidate and he's up against Joe Biden. These criminal trials and these indictments may not have a positive effect on those floating voters, those independents that Donald Trump and Joe Biden both desperately need in order to win the presidency again, because they are so tied in the polls. They really need those people who haven't made up their mind yet, and they may like these trials and these criminal indictments a lot less than that voting base that Donald Trump already has.
That's very true. Kate Fisher, great to see you. Thank you so much for that analysis and reporting. I hope to talk to you again very soon. In a significant development which is bound to have a massive impact on global markets, credit rating agency Fitch has downgraded the U.S. government's credit rating. The agency has cited the country's finances and growing debt burden for the cut in the ratings. Fitch, one of three agencies that rate the creditworthiness of a country, has downgraded the U.S. credit rating from AAA to AA+. This has been done after noting, quote, steady deteriorating in governance over the last 20 years. The month-long standoff over the debt ceiling bill has played a big role in the downgrade. The U.S. succeeded to lift the debt ceiling to $31.4 trillion in June of this year, but that was not before a bitter standoff between the Republicans and Democrats, which threatened to bring the U.S. to the point of default in its debt. In a statement, the credit rating agency said, and this is a quote, "The rating downgrade of the United States reflects the expected fiscal deterioration over the next 3 years, a high and growing general government debt burden, and the erosion of governance relative to peers." Now, here's why credit ratings matter. Investors use them as a benchmark for judging how risky it is to lend money to a government. Despite the latest downgrade, the U.S. is usually considered a highly secure investment. That is because of the size of relative stability of the U.S. economy. But the downgrade has not gone down well with the Biden administration. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen slammed the cut in the ratings as being arbitrary. She added that the downgrades is based on outdated data from 2018 to 2022. The White House said that it strongly disagrees with the decision, adding that it, quote, defies reality to downgrade the country. President of the Indian Sikh organization Shiromani Gurdwara Parbhan Dak Committee, the SGPC, Harjinder Singh Dhami, has written to Indian envoy to the United States. He has raised strong objections to reports that the New York Police Department is adopting a policy that stops Sikh policemen from growing their beards. The SGPC chief is now seeking the involvement of the Indian Ministry of External Affairs in this manner. U.S. media recently reported that a Sikh New York State trooper was barred by his supervisors from growing his facial hair for his wedding, and this was done despite a state law passed in 2019, which remains enforceable. The law mandates employers to let most workers follow religious attire or grooming obligations, and according to the department, the Sikh trooper's request was denied on the basis of a safety issue. According to the NYPD, the Sikh trooper would have faced difficulty while wearing a gas mask. While writing a letter to India's envoy to the U.S., the Sikh body's chief has termed the basis of the denial irrational. The SGPC chief maintains that gas masks can easily be worn, even if a Sikh trooper has a fully grown beard. He gave an example of this by mentioning Sikh soldiers serving in the Indian Army. He further wrote in his letter to the Indian envoy, and this is a quote once again, that in a country like the United States, the religious beliefs and customs of Sikhs are no longer a matter of introduction, and the community has the right to practice their religion. Dami also claims that this move by the NYPD will restrict employment opportunities for American Sikhs. In a major development, the PGA Tour has been effectively taken over by the players. 15-time major winner Tiger Woods is now officially calling the shots after player power forced the tournament management to cave in without a fight. This is a direct result of the peace deal signed with Live Golf back in June. Woods has been largely silent following the ceasefire agreement on the 6th of June that resulted in a framework agreement being signed by the warring parties and the ending of a costly litigation process. That deal caught the majority of the tour members by surprise and saw the tour management, including Commissioner Jay Moynihan, accused of hypocrisy. 40 of the tour's biggest players, plus Woods, wrote to the tour on Monday demanding changes. The tour immediately fell in line